So I now have the pleasure of introducing two incredible individuals. And words really cannot describe how much I love them and how wonderful they are. And one of them is an amazing brother for me and a father figure for me. He is just amazing, and it's just wonderful for me to just sit with him and just kind of like, when he gives me a hug, it's just amazing to just feel just embraced by the Father in him. So happy Father's Day, Greg. And I'm going to introduce both of them coming up right now. So would you please welcome them with me, Mr. Gregory Bender and Miss Angela Bender.
Hey, thanks for coming out. It's Father's Day.
Awesome.
It's cold outside. It's going to be cold all week. It's not going to get a decent temperature again until next weekend.
So people shouldn't be confused. This is not hot, right?
This is not hot.
This is cold.
This is what, 90 degrees or something
This is how Arizona does
today?
cold. Hey, babe.
But we're super glad you're here
We are.
on this wonderful evening. We actually have, what do we have? We have yummy snacks after church tonight, right?
We do. We have root beer floats.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to love.
What's not to love? And whose idea was that?
I don't know, somebody's.
That guy. Yeah, that guy.
Hey, Christy, could you catch the lights for us, please? Thank you.
I just love us. And I love whoever it is that God brings into this space and what he has planned for us. And I feel like one of these days we're going to be way big and we'll go, gosh, can we just go back to the days where it was just us, like on any given Sunday? So I'm so grateful for us. I'm going to invite any of you who came in later, if you didn't grab coffee or you didn't grab water, we're clearly super informal, so just get comfy. Find the spot that you want, get coffee, get whatever, and just hang out with us, with the Lord and what he has planned for us. Yay! And actually, we are going to release all the kiddos, so we're going to release you boys. What? No? You want to stay? Yay!
Don't worry, we're not going to have the root beer floats without you.
We are not going to have root beer floats without you. We are releasing you boys. Go be amazing and champions and incredible. And tonight was like such a weird night in my heart with the Lord because I've been planning for tonight for a while. And then I felt like there were some adjustments that God was making in my heart over the last 24 hours. So I'm trying to kind of process that and go, okay, Lord, how do you want to tie these two pieces together? So I'm actually just going to take a moment for us all to just agree with God about what his plans are for each one of us. And then that would include me as a part of that. And we'll just all be in this really great same page with God. And it really doesn't matter what I share or what we share. It just matters that God is so able to speak to us no matter what's being said. And he has a date with us right now where he just wanted to encourage us right now, not then. When is now? Now. Spaceballs is one of his favorite movies, not one of yours, but it was a really good reference. Spaceballs is like really one of the wittiest movies ever on, right? Thank you. Okay. We used to make Spaceball comments regularly in our marriage, but it's been a little while, so we need to like brush up on our Spaceballs lingo. I think it's super inappropriate for kids, though. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
See, have you ever done that? Watch those movies, and then like you're like, whoa, that was way more inappropriate than I remembered it being, because it was so, okay. So we'll just take a moment. Oh, is there an art with God? And so do you want to just turn it and bring it up? And then I think we have a kid who was also involved in that art, right? So we should wait for an explanation with him too.
It was Augie.
It was Augie. It was all Augie. Collaborative effort. So we will wait until Augie gets back, and then you guys can speak to it. Is that okay?
He's very nervous. He doesn't want to actually be part of it.
Well, go ahead. So do you want to share kind of how that came to be then?
Yeah, he said, Dad, do you want to draw with me? And I said, of course I do. And he said, well, I want to draw Iron Man. So we looked up a picture of Iron Man. We drew Iron. You can't really see, it's very faint. But
so good.
But I said, we need a verse. So we picked a verse out of 1 Thessalonians 5:8. But since we are of the day, let us be sober, having put on the breastplate of faith and love, and as a helmet, the hope of salvation.
Oh,
So that's how you bring the gospel to Iron Man.
right? Whoa, awesome. I love it. Does anybody else, well, let me pray and then we'll share, okay? So it's Father's Day, and Papa, so many of us haven't really, I mean, it took me a really long time to even get to a place where I could really even picture you as a father. And I remember just like 20 minutes, well, I guess it was an hour ago, pulling out of the parking lot at Walmart and going, you have been the best father to me. And you have come to be my most trusted friend and guide and dad. And I am so grateful for that journey. So Lord, prove to us today in this space just how much you love being our dad and how much you want us to awaken to that intimacy and to your heart for us. We just say yes to your plans for us. Amen. So does anybody else have something that they want to share that they feel like God is kind of doing or speaking into their life? Can you take a moment? Kathy does. Yay. Thanks, Kathy.
God has been redefining the word surrender for me, and trust, because I haven't trusted him for most of my life. And the last 8 weeks have been a real exciting, scary, wonderful journey in trusting him to bring together situations that have allowed things in my life, in my marriage, in situations with my parents, in situations at home that have been difficult, to trust him to bring those things around, to be vulnerable to those people that have offered to help, and to be powerful enough to be able to speak truth in the process. And it's been an amazing experience to surrender to his will, and incredible to watch and see how it is bringing forth things in my life that I never ever thought would change or happen.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for him.
Yay. I loved, yeah, right? Yay. I loved what you said when you came in tonight, Kathy. You said these last messages, so you've been watching online, because our messages are online, and that you were saying like these are the steps that God's been walking you through, and you said each week you can feel it ramping up, and I can feel it too, and I'm just so excited that even when we're not in the same part of the country or in the same space, we're still in this journey together, really standing with and for each other. So that made me really excited to see how God was moving that way. Did anybody else want to make a comment? I'm going to take a drink of water because you always say to wait. Yeah, right, 18 seconds. That seems ridiculously long. Anything past like 2.1 seconds. Did you all know that we didn't know whether Darby was a boy or girl when we were pregnant with her? And our whole plan was that Greg would announce whether she was a boy or a girl. We didn't want our midwife to announce that. We wanted that to be like for Greg to get to say that out loud for the first time, that a father would proclaim her. And so after she was born, you know, they were holding her up, and I swear I waited like, I don't know, 10 minutes, and he did not announce that she was a girl, so I jumped in. And in the video, it clearly shows that it was 0.2 seconds that I waited for him to announce. So our time frames are clearly off. So anyway, our sense of timing is yeah, not always in sync, right? Not always in sync. Okay. Okay, Lord, I'm so excited. I'm trying to think of how we want to lift off this plane. I have a couple of different options. I remember Graham Cook is my superhero in the faith, and I remember him telling a story about being in a house full of people, and they were praying for a gentleman who had just really received a fatal diagnosis. And so they had invited all of their friends and all of their families over to pray for this man for healing. And so in every room you could go into, people were praying for healing for this man. And Graham was asking the Lord, how are you going to do this? How do you want to do this? And he felt like the Lord said, just listen, walk through the rooms and listen. And so Graham walked through the different rooms and he could hear different people praying, and he realized, do you remember this story, Kathy? Right? It's a really powerful, that people were praying in all different directions, and people were praying in all different ways. And the Lord said, listen to the people, or pay attention to the people who are listening. And he said, and invite them back tomorrow night. So he walked around and saw all the people who were, instead of praying, they were listening. And he asked them to come back the next night. And then he said to all of those people who hadn't launched into what they thought they were supposed to pray for, instead they had stopped to listen to what God was doing in the situation. And he said, now that we have the right people in the room, now let's listen to what God wants to do. And I know that that happens so often in our relationship and even with the Lord, where we think that the right thing to do is to jump in and offer a solution, or to offer an answer, or to offer a help. When so often what the invitation from God is to ask the question, what are you doing here? What does this mean? Where are you going? So that I can get on the page and get in the flow with what you're doing. And I so feel like this series that we're kind of just getting ramped up in, which is on becoming powerful people, is so a part of our listening journey with God, about Him proclaiming over us who we are. And nobody's going to jump the gun and proclaim over you, but your very good Father is calling out your name. And in this space, He is releasing a revelation of your identity in who He made you to be. And He is releasing a generational blessing that may not have ever been accessible until the timing is now. I was just talking with Lindsay and Jared briefly. I think it was both of you, but I'm not sure if it was. I can't remember. It was like, lots of words were being used. But we were talking about, that dad thing and blessings and lack of blessing. And one of the things that came to my mind was a situation that we had with your generations, with generations past. And we know that there had been a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. How many of us have hurt and pain, going up from our parents to grandparents to great-grandparents, right? There's hurt and pain. Where our relatives and the generations going up, they didn't discover who God really made them to be. And so out of that hurt and pain and a lack of understanding and a lack of identity and a lack of knowing that they could become powerful, they were less than everything that God meant for them to be. And then that goes on to the next generation and on to the next generation. And how many of us could probably point to things in our lives right now that we go, this is probably me living out the lack of the generations that have gone before me. Right? And you don't want to pass it on. You don't want your kids to live the very legacy, that has gone before. But then how do you stop it? And I remember the Lord saying to me, embrace, because Greg and I had that question, how do we do this? And Greg kind of said, I want to stop the hurt that's happened, but how do we do that? And I felt like the Lord said, every bit of blessing and anointing and presence and gifting that I always meant for all of those generations before you to have, they are available to you even if they weren't lived out. Because so many of us are waiting for other people to give to us the things that we need to become, and the Lord is going, I have it for you. I have it for you. You're not just living the result of what your family has been for you, what your spouse has been for you, what friends have been for you, what your parents have been for you. We are living in a time where what is available to us is everything that was never discovered in our family's history. Everything that was never known is ours to claim if we want it. What was that? That's right. It's ours. It's not gone. It didn't dissipate and it didn't disappear. And so we have all the beautiful blessings that we have from our family. And then we also have, in addition to great blessing, we have great opportunity. And I think it's a part of how we're learning to hear God. You know how we're learning to hear practice and hear God prophetically? This is a part of our legacy, is to know what we have been always meant to own. And I can guarantee you this, you want a roadmap for it? You want to know, like, well, what is it? What is it that I was always meant to own? Write a list of all the negative things that you don't know how to change and flip it. And there's a starting point. Of all the things that you were ever meant to have is the very opposite of all the pain that is currently in your life. Did you want to? I saw you move just a hair. You're good?
Adjusting myself.
Okay, just adjusting. So, how do we become these powerful people that God always meant us to be? I think part of it is recognizing a foundation of relationship that's healthy. Do anybody of you know, okay, what really makes a healthy relationship? Healthy relationships with others, healthy relationship with myself. What makes did anybody ever wondered that? I've wondered that forever. Really, if you were to boil it all down, what would a healthy relationship look like? Anybody got any things you want to throw out? Yeah, Dustin. Go ahead. Hang on 1 second. Greg's going to run back. He's ready to go. He's boom, boom, boom.
I'm trying to learn in my life.
Yeah.
So I felt like I wasn't given acceptance and unconditional love. And so it seems like those are two things of my purpose, not only to learn to give myself and receive, but then I want to extend unconditional acceptance and love to others and help them just to feel good and grow like God wants us all to. So
all right.
I think unconditional love, mutual respect.
Yes.
And I'm trying to get there, but more consistency and loyalty.
Yeah, consistency and loyalty. Really good. And by the way, you have cards. If for any of you don't know, cards are in the buckets and pens. So if you want to take notes, you want to write a few things down, you're welcome to do it. Anybody else want to jump in here? Jocelyn.
I'll jump. Boundaries. Knowing what is okay and what's not, depending on the relationship.
Do you sometimes go, okay, what do I do now? Do I stay? What do I do in this situation? Okay, so good. Okay, anyone else? Okay, I think that one of the keys to a super healthy relationship is the foundation of I choose you. So many of us have developed a lot of our relationships based on someone else communicating in some way that they like us. And so we chose them because they chose us. So you know how this goes, right? You're in high school, you're in junior high, you go into the lunchroom, you look around, you have no idea what's going to happen next, you don't know who are going to be your friends, who are not going to be your friends, and you just stand there with the whole world before you, and you're thinking to yourself, is somebody going to like me? Are they going to embrace me? Am I going to have friends? Am I not going to have friends? And somebody says, hey, why don't you come sit over here? And you take a deep breath and go, yes, thank you. And you automatically go to the place where someone reached out to you first. Because what? Because we so often default to choosing the people who choose us first, instead of becoming the powerful person who says, what do I choose? And it sets us up for an unhealthy relational dynamic of thinking that our choosing someone else is based on their choosing us. Our meeting other people's needs is based on them meeting our needs. How many of us can think of relationships right now where we're like, oh, I think I probably fell into that already? And so if you are going to be a powerful person, a huge part of being a powerful person is going, I choose to be in a relationship with you regardless of how you reflect back to me. I choose this. I choose this. So I'm going to have you put that up on the board. Not, I end up with you because you chose me. Every day when you're in a relationship with someone is a choice to be present and to be engaged. And some of us have fallen into patterns where we don't choose that other person for, I don't know, a year. We don't choose them for 2 years. We might be living in the same house with someone that we don't choose to be in relationship with actively, proactively, because they're not doing it for us, so we don't do it for them, and so we aren't saying, I choose you. Now, I'm not talking about choosing someone where things are super unhealthy, because that's another boundaries type conversation, and how do we get healthy? But we're talking about the foundation of a healthy relationship is two people who say, I choose you. Any thought or comment so far? Starting to get good. Because if we find ourselves in relationships where we are returning like for like, oh yikes, what happens? You know. Anyone want to comment? What happens if we're returning like for like? The whole relationship becomes about, what are you doing for me? How are you meeting my needs? And that results in always the dynamic of at least one person having to be always the victim, the bad guy, or the rescuer. So you put that on the board. If we, the victim, the bad guy, and the rescuer, like 1, 2, 3, victim, bad guy, and rescuer. Because if we are looking for someone else to meet the needs that were always meant to be met by God within ourselves, we will always find ourselves triangulated in these roles. If the person's not meeting your needs, you become the victim. You may jump over and decide to rescue them for a while. But if that doesn't work out, you end up the bad guy. Let me give you an example. I remember watching an interview about Steve Jobs, and amazing guy and had tremendous accomplishments, but the docudrama was interviewing the guy who was his second in command. I don't know if any of you saw this or not. Super interesting, great docudrama. And the man who was his second in command said, you know, in order to work for Steve Jobs, you pretty much have to give everything you've got. It will pretty much cost you everything. It will cost you your marriage, it will cost you your life, it will cost you everything, because that's what is required to work for someone with that much force in their relationships. And he said, there's really only one of 3 ways that Steve relates to any person in his life. He is either seducing them, he is ignoring them, or he is villainizing them. And I realized, okay, that makes so much sense to me, because for Steve, with the force of what he wanted to accomplish in the world, you either had something to offer him, you were either a rescuer with some sort of tech, information, skill set, or if you didn't give that to him, you were the bad guy, or you were irrelevant. So many times we move in and out of those roles in our marriage and in our friendships and our relationships with our parents, right? And we can flip these roles. We're either rescuing a person, or we're a victim of the person, or we become completely irrelevant to the person, or we are being villainized. And when we find ourselves caught in that pattern of ping-ponging in and out of those roles, do you know what that's a sign of? This is super easy. An unhealthy relationship. An unhealthy relationship where there are 2 people who have not yet become powerful. Because powerful people say, I choose you, and I take full responsibility for my choices every day. So I'm going to have you put that up. I take full responsibility for my choices every day. That's what a powerful person is. Now, we talked last week about responsibility. Isn't that word like, oh, I do the things I don't want to do? Like, right? How many of us have ever done this? Hey, honey, could you do this? And we're like, sure, I could do that. Right? Is that ever? You slam the door, you kick something on your way out. Because what have you just done? You've said yes, and you've communicated that you really didn't want to do it. So that was your indirect communication of going, I am a powerless person. I feel caught having to do things that I don't want to do, but I will do them because I feel like I have to. That's the language of a powerless person. In fact, a powerless person, I'm going to have you put that down here. So this is a powerful person, right here. I choose you, I take full responsibility for my choices. That's a powerful person. A powerless person uses language like this. I have to, I must, I can't, I should. A powerless person feels that they are always a victim of their circumstances. I can't go out with you because I have to work. Instead of saying, I wish I could go out with you, but I need to work. I'm going to work. I am making the decision to do this instead of this. I'm not a victim of my job. I'm not a victim of this circumstance. I am choosing this over this. How many of us talk with the I can't because I have to ... Right? Thank you, Linz. All the time. And why do we do that? Because we don't want to hurt other people's feelings. We don't want to hurt other people's feelings. And so we become powerless. In fact, many of us have become powerless because we were never raised to be powerful people. How many of us feel that you were really raised to be this person? I choose you, I make this choice. Excellent! And I take responsibility for my choices. Right? Yeah, did you want to make a comment?
I think also
hold on.
That plays into the I have to. Is that we really don't stop and take control of our day. We just let it pull us along. And then suddenly we're out of time, or suddenly we're whatever. And so sometimes we're not just trying to not hurt somebody's feelings, but it's just a lack of knowing that we're in control of our day, and then it just happens. And then we're the victim, rather than saying, I'm in control of my time.
We and everybody else are a victim of our inability to take responsibility. And remember, responsibility means response able. You are able to respond. Things don't happen to you. You make choices. So if you'll put response able here, that would be great. That's so good, Lindsay. Anybody else want to jump in and comment? So I don't know if I was raised to be a powerful person, because I was really raised to comply and obey. I know, I saw. That's how I was raised. I was raised to comply and obey. Comply to the instructions and obey the commands, and I'll become a good citizen if I learn how to comply and obey. And you comply and obey to the voice that's the loudest, right? Compliance and obedience does not create a powerful person. Compliance and obedience creates this dynamic that continues to revolve in your life. What? I know, kind of crazy. Compliance and obedience doesn't create people who are response able. I know there's a whole bunch of people going, what am I going to do with my parenting? Or what am I going to do with... So compliance and obedience teaches you to respond to the voice that's the loudest, which may be the clock on any given day. It might be your spouse on any given day. It might be fines and fees. It might be the law. It might be guilt. It might be a person who's powerful in your life. Whatever it is, if you are geared towards responding to instead of being response able, you will find yourself continually feeling, do you know what? Angry and agitated and anxious. Because the number one emotion of a powerless person is anxiety. So I'm going to have you put powerless. Oh, wait, I have to. I'm going to put, and I want you to put, they're driven by anxiety. Because why? Because the needs in their life will continually conflict. And when the needs in your life continually conflict, you find that you have to resort to control and manipulation to make it work. Whether it's overt or covert, whether it's aggressive control and manipulation or it's passive, and it doesn't seem like, do you know how many people control others through their incompetence? Preaching to the choir here, there is an area of our life that I am going, Lord, I have got to get a win over this. And it's the area of keeping things neat and clean. I'll just be honest with you, neat and clean in our house. And I'm going, I need to be responsible. But somehow I continue to remain powerless because I do other things instead. I continually do other things. Now, I'm not talking about, vacuuming in stripes. I'm sorry, that's just out, and you don't care anyway. But, a house that just feels comfortable. And I don't have little kids, so you can't count. If you have kids under 5, I'm sorry. Picked up is not going to happen for you. That shouldn't even be a goal. Take that off the table. Picked up's not going to happen. You get one room that's clean, and that's all you get. It might be the bathroom, but you get one room that's clean, and that's all you get. You got kids under 5, But after that, if you're not teaching them to be responsible, they will continue to respond in all of life as a victim, as a villain, or as a rescuer. They will hear all of life's situations, and they will either become a victim of the situation, or they will jump in and try to rescue the situation. And everyone else will determine that they're either a rescuer or a villain or a bad guy. Have you watched this dynamic happen in your life where it rotates around and around and around? And then you find yourself responding to these loud voices that, and I'm going to have driven by anxiety, and then put control and manipulation. Sometimes we're not even aware of how we attempt to control and manipulate. We may even share vulnerably our needs in an attempt to coerce another person to meet the needs that God always meant to have be met within ourselves. Oh my gosh. Now, why am I even doing all this? Why are we sharing all this? I believe that one of the things that God is doing in our community at Desert Outpouring is He is awakening us to being powerful people. He is awakening us to having powerful choices. One of the funniest things that happened this weekend was Lindsay, we were walking in with Bailey, the dog, and I said, hey, how's it going? And she goes, I just needed a minute to become a powerful person. We had just started talking about it. She goes, just needed to take a moment to become powerful. And I'm like, right? Don't we need that? Sometimes we need a moment to remember that we are not a victim of our circumstances, that we get to make powerful choices each day, and that the people around us also get to. So this is we're just starting to step into. Now, if you want more information, and you're going, Ange, where did you get some of this? My inspiration point is actually Danny Silk, Keep Your Love On. Because I feel like his understanding of powerful people is just where God led us. And so he outlines pieces of this, and then I felt like the Lord kind of added to it. So some of it's his, some of it's ours. And if you want it got more of his, then you are welcome to get that book. Yeah. I would love for you to add something. I love when you add something. My notes got totally out of order, so I'm checking.
So what was going on when I was walking the dog and taking a minute is I had just gotten in a text fight with my brother, and
I love text fights, right? The best communication ever is in a text
always
fight.
A text.
And it's super clear when foul language
never
is used.
miscommunicated. Because my brother's 11 years older than me, what I immediately want to do is become the victim and call my big sister and say, he was mean to me, when he said, go victim. Mm-hmm. So I look like the good guy. I make him out to be the bad guy.
Right.
That's my go-to.
Right.
Is the victim.
So that's quick. That's very insightful.
And that was the moment where I went, you could do that as you always do it, or have another thought. Maybe there's another way that you can think about this where you don't have to manipulate the situation, because I was feeling bad about some things too. And so that's what I was doing. I was just going, there's got to be another way that I don't go into my normal victim mode right now.
Right. And when you do that, does she become a rescuer and solve it? Yeah. So that meets a need for her, and that meets a need for you. Solves the problem, and she feels good about herself. And that's how the dance works with family, right? No, it's crazy. Okay, anybody else want to make a comment? Oh, I need to check my time. It's so suspiciously quiet out there. Okay. One of the things that I've discovered about people who see themselves as powerless people, even though they may not even recognize it, is that they often don't see themselves as contributors. They don't see themselves as contributors in the relationship. They don't see themselves as a contributor in the community. So you know that you have experienced damage to your identity. Can you hear me in this? You have experienced damage to your identity if you struggle with knowing that you have a contribution in every interaction that you step into. You have something to contribute. If you struggle with that thought, then you have not known who you are. And we're finding out. Yes, right? Because how can you be responsible to what you have to contribute if you have thought that you don't have anything to contribute? You only have something to receive. And what that forces other people into is being what? Your rescuer. Oh, yes. So some of the language of powerless people